Ramakrishna Mission and Swami Vivekananda, Contribution in Social Reform. Ramakrishna Mission and Swami Vivekananda. Ramakrishna's mission teachings are based on ancient and traditional concepts increasing westernization and modernization. It was founded and conceived by Swami Vivekananda in 1897, that is around 11 years after the death of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. The 19th century Godman of India was not a supporter of any cult, nor do they show a new path to salvation. Their message was God consciousness. According to them, the traditions become dogmatic and oppressive, and religious teachings lose their transforming power when God consciousness falls short. Read National Youth Day 2022, know about theme, history, significance, and key facts here on Rashtriya Yuva Divas. Ramakrishna Mission, AD 1836 to 1886. Ramakrishna Paramhansa was a priest in a temple at Dakshineswar near Calcutta. After coming in contact with the leaders of other religions, he accepted the sanctity of all faiths. Almost all religious reformers of his time, including Keshab Chandra Sen and Dayanand, called on him for religious discussion and guidance. The contemporary Indian intellectuals, whose faith in their own cultures had been shaken by the challenge from the West, found reassurance from his teachings. In order to propagate the teachings of Ramakrishna and put them into practice, Ramakrishna Mission was founded in 1897 by his favorite disciple Vivekananda. The mission stood for social service. The best way to serve God is to serve mankind was its motto. Ramakrishna Mission, since its beginning, has grown into a very powerful center of numerous public activities. These include organizing relief during floods, famines, and epidemics, establishing hospitals, and running educational institutions. Read National Youth Day 2022, 25 powerful and inspirational quotes and poems by Swami Vivekananda. Vivekananda, AD 1863 to 1902. Vivekananda had a character altogether different from that of his master. He studied Indian and Western philosophies but could not find peace of mind until he met Ramakrishna. He was, however, not content just with spirituality. The question that constantly agitated him was the degenerated condition of his motherland. After an all-India tour, he found that poverty, squalor, loss of mental vigor and no hope for the future were prevalent everywhere. Vivekananda frankly stated, "It is we who are responsible for all our misery and all our degradation." He urged his countrymen to work for their own salvation. So he took upon himself the task of awakening his countrymen and reminding them of their weaknesses. He inspired them to struggle unto life and death to bring about a new state of things, sympathy for the poor, and bread to their hungry mouths, enlightenment to the people at large. Vivekananda in 1893 participated in the All-World Religions Conference, Parliament of Religions, at Chicago in the USA. His address there made a deep impression on the people of other countries and thus helped to raise the prestige of Indian culture in the eyes of the world. Ramakrishna Paramhansa's and Vivekananda's philosophies moved around harmony of religions. And this harmony is to be realized by deepening of individuals' God consciousness. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar became a legendary figure for his simple living, fearlessness, spirit of self-sacrifice, his devotion to education, to the cause of the downtrodden. He introduced the study of modern Western thought in the Sanskrit college and admitted students belonging to the so-called lower castes to study Sanskrit. Earlier, studies in Sanskrit college were confined to traditional subjects. The study of Sanskrit itself was a monopoly of Brahmins and the so-called lower castes were not allowed to study it. He made a great contribution to the Bengali language, and is considered the originator of modern Bengali language. He was closely associated with many journals and newspapers and wrote powerful articles advocating social reforms. His greatest contribution was to the cause of widow upliftment and girl education. He played a great role in the passing of the law which made the marriage of widows legal. He personally took part in the first widow remarriage that was performed in Calcutta in 1856. He was attacked by the Orthodox Hindus for his powerful support to the cause of widow remarriage as well as for his efforts at promoting education of girls. In 1855 he was made Special Inspector of Schools. He opened a number of new schools, including girls' schools, in the districts under his charge. The authorities did not like this and he resigned from his post. He was closely associated with Drinkwater Bethune, who had started the first school for girls' education in Calcutta in 1849. Major contribution of Ishwar Chand. 1. He introduced the study of modern Western thought in the Sanskrit college. 2. He played an important role in the upliftment of widows' and girls' education. 3. He was one of the contributors to the law passing which made the widow marriage legal. 4. He started the first school for girls' education in Calcutta in 1849. 5. He was a powerful supporter of widow remarriage. 6. He was closely associated with many journal and newspapers and wrote powerful articles advocating social reforms. 7. He was great contributor of Bengali language, and considered as originator of modern Bengali language. Vivian Desrosiers, Young Bengal Movement, Ideas, Objectives, and Teaching. For carrying on the modernizing movements in Bengal, the Hindu College of Calcutta, founded in 1817, played an important role. David Hare, an associate of Ram Mohan Roy, took keen interest in starting this college. He had come from Scotland to sell watches in Calcutta, but later made the spread of modern education in Bengal his life's mission. In 1826, a young man of 17, Henry Vivian Desrosiers, whose father was of Portuguese origin and mother an English woman, joined Hindu College as a teacher. Within no time he drew around him the best boys of the college, whom he constantly encouraged to think freely, and to question all authorities. Desrosiers promoted radical ideas through his teaching and by organizing an association for debates and discussions on literature, history, philosophy, and science. Through these activities, Desrosiers practically charmed the young students of Calcutta and brought about an intellectual revolution among them. Desrosiers and Young Bengal. Desrosiers' students, collectively called the Young Bengal, ridiculed all old social traditions and customs, debated the existence of God, defied social and religious convictions, and demanded freedom of thought and expression. Boys of the college whom he constantly encouraged to think freely, and to question all authorities. Ideas and teaching. Desrosiers promoted radical ideas through his teachings and by organizing an association for debates and discussions on literature, history, philosophy, and science. Desrosiers wanted to spread intellectual revolution among young students. He was a great propounder of liberal thinking. He was supporter of freedom of speech, thought, and education of women. Defied social and religious conventions. He stated that radical views were the roots of religious philosophy. He ridiculed old social traditions and customs, and debated the existence of God. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Brahmo Samaj, Significance and Objectives. Ram Mohan Roy, Brahmo Samaj, Significance and Objectives. Beginning with the reform of certain aspects of religious and social life, this awakening, in course of time, affected every aspect of the social, economic, cultural, and political life of the country. From the late 18th century, a number of European and Indian scholars began the study of ancient India's philosophy, science, religions, and literature. This gave Indians a sense of pride in their civilization. The study of ancient India's philosophy also helped the reformers in their struggle against social evils, superstitions, and inhuman practices and customs, as they used the authority of the ancient texts to put an end to these evils. While doing so, most of them cited reasons rather than mere belief and faith. Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was born in a well-to-do family in Bengal, probably in 1772. He received his traditional Sanskrit learning at Banaras and Arabic and Persian learning at Patna. Later, he learnt English, Greek, and Hebrew. He also knew French and Latin. He made a deep study not only of Hinduism but also of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. He wrote a number of books in Bengali, Hindi, Sanskrit, Persian, and English. He started 2 newspapers, one in Bengali and another in Persian. He was given the title of Raja and sent to England by the Mughal emperor as his envoy. He reached England in 1831 and died there in 1833. He supported the introduction of English education in India, which was necessary to promote enlightenment and knowledge of science. He was a great believer in the freedom of the press and campaigned for the removal of restrictions on the press. Ram Mohan Roy was convinced that to purify the Hindu religion of the evils that had crept into it, it was necessary to bring to the knowledge of the people the original texts of their religion. For this purpose, he took up the hard and patient job of publishing the Bengali translations of the Vedas and Upanishads. He advocated belief in a universal religion based on the principle of one supreme God. He condemned idol worship and the rites and rituals. Socio-religious reform movements and reformers in India. Brahmo Samaj. His greatest achievement in the field of religious reform was the setting up of the Brahmo Sabha in 1828, and the Brahmo Samaj was the first important organization of religious reforms. It forbade idol worship and discarded meaningless rites and rituals. The Samaj also forbade its members from attacking any religion. The greatest achievement in the field of social reform was the abolition of sati in 1829. He had seen how the wife of his elder brother was forced to commit sati. His campaign against sati aroused the opposition of the orthodox Hindus who bitterly attacked him. Ram Mohan Roy realized that the practice of sati was due to the extremely low position of Hindu women. He advocated the abolition of polygamy and wanted women to be educated and given the right to inherit property. The influence of Brahmo Samaj spread and branches of the Samaj were opened in different parts of the country. The two most prominent leaders of the Brahmo Samaj were Debendranath Tagore and Keshab Chandra Sen. To spread the message of Brahmo Samaj, Keshab Chandra Sen travelled throughout Madras and Bombay presidencies and, later, northern India. In 1866, there was a split in the Brahmo Samaj when Keshab Chandra Sen and his group held views that were more radical than those of the original Brahmo Samajists. They proclaimed freedom from the bondage of caste and customs, and from the authority of scriptures. They advocated and performed inter-caste marriages and widow remarriages, opposed the custom of purdah and condemned caste divisions. They attacked caste rigidity, started taking their food with the people of the so-called lower castes and other religions, opposed restrictions about food and drink, devoted their lives to the spread of education and condemned the old Hindu opposition to sea voyages. This movement influenced similar movements of reforms in other parts of the country. While this group rose in prominence, the influence of the other group, which showed little interest in social reforms, declined. The Revolt of 1857, Causes, Nature, Importance and Outcomes. The Revolt of 1857, Causes, Nature, Importance and Outcomes. The Revolt of 1857 was a prolonged period of armed uprising as well as rebellions in northern and central India against British occupation of that part of the subcontinent. Small precursors of brewing discontent involving incidences of arson in cantonment areas began to manifest themselves in January. Later, a large-scale rebellion broke out in May and turned into what may be called a full-fledged war in the affected region. This war brought about the end of the British East India Company's rule in India, and led to the direct rule by the British government, British Raj, of much of the Indian subcontinent for the next 90 years. Causes of 1857 Revolt. The issue of greased cartridges and military grievances has been overemphasized, as the factor for the revolt of 1857. However, recent researches have proved that the cartridge was not the only cause for this revolt. In fact, multiple causes, i.e., social, religious, political, economic, worked together to produce the rebellion. 1. Social and religious causes. The British had abandoned its policy of non-interference in the socio-religious life of the Indians. Abolition of Sati, 1829, Hindu Widow Remarriage Act, 1856. Christian missionaries were allowed to enter India and carry on with their mission of proselytizing. The Religious Disabilities Act of 1850 modified the traditional Hindu law. According to it, the change in religion would not debar a son from inheriting the property of his heathen father. 2. Economic causes. British rule led to the breakdown of the village self-sufficiency, commercialization of agriculture which burdened the peasantry, adoption of free trade imperialism from 1800, deindustrialization, and drain of wealth, all of which led to the overall decline of the economy. 3. Military grievances. The extension of British dominion in India had adversely affected the service condition of the sepoys. They were required to serve in an area away from their homes without the payment of extra bhata. An important cause of military discontent was the General Service Enlistment Act, 1856, which made it compulsory for the sepoys to cross the seas, whenever required. The Post Office Act of 1854 withdrew the free postage facility for them. 4. Political causes. The last major extension of the British Indian territory took place during the time of Dalhousie. Dalhousie announced in 1849 that the successor of Bahadur Shah II would have to leave the Red Fort. The annexation of Baghat and Udaipur was, however, cancelled and they were restored to their ruling houses. When Dalhousie wanted to apply the doctrine of lapse to Karauli, Rajputana, he was overruled by the Court of Directors. Leaders associated with the revolt of 1857. Barakpur, Mongol Ponde, Delhi. Bahadur Shah II, General Bakht Khan, Delhi. Haki Mahanyala, Chief Advisor to Bahadur Shah II, Lucknow. Begum Hazrat Mahal, Burjis Kodi, Ahmadullah, Advisor of the ex-Nawab of Awadh, Kanpur. Nana Sahib, Oyo Sahib, nephew of Nana, Tantia Tope, Azimullah Khan, Advisor of Nana Sahib, Jhansi. Rani Laxmibai, Bihar, Jagdishpur. Kanwar Singh, Amar Singh, Allahabad and Banaras. Maulvi Liaquat Ali, Faizabad. Maulvi Ahmadullah, he declared the revolt as jihad against English. Farrukhabad. Tafzul Hassan Khan, Binur. Mohammed Khan, Muradad. Abdul Ali Khan, Bareilly. Khan Bahadur Khan, Mansur. Firoz Shah, Gwalior Kanpur. Tantia Tope, Assam. Kandapareshwar Singh, Manirama Dutta. Orissa. Surendra Shahi, Ujjwal Shahi. Kalu. Raja Pratap Singh. Rajasthan. Jaidayal Singh and Hardayal Singh. Gorakhpur. Gajada Singh. Mathura. Sevi Singh, Kodam Singh. Sholess. British officials associated with revolt. General John Nicholson. Captured Delhi on 20 September 1857, Nicholson died soon due to a mortal wound received during the fighting. Major Hudson. Killed Bahadur Shah's sons and grandsons in Delhi. Sir Hugh Wheeler. Defence against Nana Sahib's forces till 26 June 1857. British forces surrendered on 27th on the promise of safe conduct to Allahabad. General Neil. Recaptured Benares and Allahabad in June 1857. At Kanpur, he killed Indians as revenge against the killing of English by Nana Sahib's forces. Died at Lucknow while fighting against the rebels. Sir Colin Campbell. Final recovery of Kanpur on 6 December 1857. Final reoccupation of Lucknow on 21 March, 1858. Recapture of Bareilly on 5 May 1858. Henry Lawrence. Chief Commissioner of Awadh. Who died during the seizure of British residency by rebels at Lucknow on 2 July 1857. Major General Havelock. Defeated the rebels, Nana Sahib's force, on 17 July 1857. Died at Lucknow in December 1857. William Taylor and I. Suppressed the revolt at Arrah in August 1857. Hugh Rose. Suppressed the revolt at Jhansi and recaptured Gwalior on 20 June 1858. The whole of central India and Bundelkhand was brought under British control by him. Colonel Onsell. Captured Benares. Sholess. Causes of failure. 1. Some of the local rulers like Scindia of Gwalior, the Holkar of Indore, the Nizam of Hyderabad, the Raja of Jodhpur, the Nawab of Bhopal, the rulers of Peshawar, Sindh, and Kashmir, and the Rana of Nepal provided active support to the British. 2. The military equipment of the rebels was inferior. Comparative lack of efficient leadership. 3. The modern intelligent Indians also didn't support the cause. Impact of the revolt. 1. The revolt was mainly feudal in character, carrying with it some nationalist elements. 2. The control of Indian administration was passed on to the British Crown by the Government of India Act, 1858. 3. The army was carefully reorganized to prevent the recurrence of such an event. The Revolt of 1857 was an extremely important event in Indian history. It was merely a product of sepoy but was accumulated grievances of the people against the company's administration and of their dislike for the foreign regime. Social legislation under British rule. The policies of the British with the beginning of 19th century though helped in abolition of social evils prevalent at that time but gradually led to breach the socio-religious fabric of India since they were mainly focused and based on the English perception and attitude. The Orientalism, features of Hastings period, exponents stated that Indian society needed modernization and westernization. They faced acute criticism from a number of ideological streams. To quote evangelical challenges led by William Wilberforce and Charles Grant, the Indian society is full of superstition, idolatry, and tyranny of the priests. They supported the modernization of India but through Christian missionaries. The British introduced several changes in Indian social practices to exemplify the efforts of reformers. The following measures were adopted by the British government to improve the condition of women and also eradicate various social evils. Female infanticide. This practice was very common among upper-class Bengalis and Rajputs who considered females as economic burden. Hence, in order to reform the perception of Indian society, the Bengal Regulation Acts of 1795 and 1804 declared murdering of female infant illegal, and thus in 1870, an act was passed for the prohibition of female infanticide. The act stated that it was compulsory for parents to register the birth of all children and provided for the verification of female child for some years after birth, especially those areas where this custom was very much prevalent. Abolition of sati. This was influenced by the step of Raja Ram Mohan Roy's frontal attack. The British government decided to abolish the practice of sati or live burning of widow and declared it as culpable homicide. The regulation of 1829 was applicable for the first instance to Bengal Presidency alone, but was extended with slight modification to Madras and Bombay presidencies in 1830. Abolition of slavery. This was another practice which came under British scanner. Hence, under Charter Act of 1833 slavery in India was abolished, and under Act V of 1843 the practice of slavery got sacked by law and declared illegal. The Penal Code of 1860 also declared trade in slavery illegal. Widow remarriage. These practices were high on agenda of Brahmo Samaj and issue got polarized. There were a number of steps taken to promote widow remarriage by establishing women's colleges, universities, associations, and preaching of Vedic stand on widow remarriage. Prohibition of child marriage. In 1872, the Native Marriage Act, Civil Marriage Act, intended legislative action for the prohibition but had very limited periphery because it was not applicable to Hindus, Muslims, and other recognized religions. In 1891, B.M. Malabari's efforts bore fruit when the Act of the Age of Consent was enacted, which prohibited the marriage of girl child below the age of 12 years. Finally, after independence, the Child Marriage Restraint Amendment Act made further changes in the age of marriage, for girls 18 years and boys 21 years. Reform movements in southern India. Reform movements in southern India. Beginning in Bengal, the religious and social reform movements spread to other parts of India. By drawing inspiration from the Brahmo Samaj, the Veda Samaj was established in Madras in 1864. It advocated discarding of caste distinctions and promotion of widow remarriage and girl education. Like the Brahmo Samaj, the Veda Samaj also condemned superstitions and rituals of orthodox Hinduism and propagated belief in one supreme god. Chembeti Sridharalu Naidu was the most prominent leader of the Veda Samaj. He translated books of the Brahmo Samaj in Tamil and Telugu. Later, the Brahmo Samaj of South India and its branches were established in some cities of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Andhra. Soon after, branches of the Prathana Samaj were also opened and the two Samajas worked together for promoting religious and social reforms. An outstanding leader of the reform movements in southern India was Kandukuri Veerasalingam. He was born in 1848 in an orthodox Brahmin family in Andhra. He was influenced by the ideas of the Brahmo Samaj, particularly those of Keshab Chandra Sen, and dedicated himself to the cause of social reforms. In 1876, he started a Telugu journal which was almost exclusively devoted to social reforms. His greatest contribution was to the cause of emancipation of women. This included promoting girl education and widow remarriages. A significant movement which was particularly important for the upliftment of the oppressed sections of the society was started by Sri Narayana Guru in Kerala. Narayana Guru was born in 1854 in an Yasava family. The Yasavas, along with some others in Kerala, were considered untouchable by Hindus of the so-called upper castes. Narayana Guru acquired Sanskrit education and devoted himself to the upliftment of the Yasavas and other oppressed people. He started establishing temples in which gods or their images had no place. He established the first temple by installing stone from a nearby stream. The stone carried the following words: "Here is the place where all people live in fraternity without caste distinctions and religious rivalry." Narayana Guru in 1903 founded the Sri Narayana Dharma Paripalana Yogam, which became an important organization for social reforms. He advocated one caste, one religion and one God for all. Many reformers in southern India concerned themselves with the reform in certain practices connected with Hindu temples. They advocated ending of the system of devadasis who were attached to the temples. They also demanded that the wealth of the temples should not be amassed by the priests but that the public should exercise control over it. In many temples, people of the so-called lower castes were not allowed to enter, and sometimes even some roads adjoining the temples were barred to them. The reformers launched powerful movements for temple entry and against other evil practices which had become associated with temples. Reform movements in Western India. The Prathana Samaj is one of the prominent reform movement in Western India, which was founded in 1867 by Dr. Atmaram Pandurang, Mahadev Govind Ranade and Raman Krishna Bhandarkar against the caste system and the practice of untouchability. The leaders of the Prathana Samaj were influenced by the Brahmo Samaj. They worked for improving the status of women and advocated widow remarriage. Ranade, who was also one of the founders of the Indian National Congress, founded the Indian National Social Conference in 1887 with the aim of working for social reforms effectively all over the country. This conference met every year when the sessions of the Indian National Congress were held to discuss social problems. Ranade believed that without social reforms, it was not possible to achieve any progress in the political and economic fields. He was a great advocate of Hindu-Muslim unity and declared that in this vast country no progress is possible unless both Hindus and Mohammedans join hands together. Two other great reformers in Western India were Gopal Hari Deshmukh Lokahitwadi and Jyotirao Govindrao Phule, popularly known as Jyotiba or Mahatma Phule. Lokahitwadi was associated with a number of social reform organizations. He condemned the caste system and worked for the upliftment of women. Social services programs of Prathana Samaj. Spread of female education. Opening orphan homes. Widows' homes. Night schools. Free clinical. Mahatma Phule dedicated himself to the cause of the oppressed sections of society and women's upliftment. In 1848, he started a school for the girls of the so-called lower castes and educated his wife so that she could teach in that school. In 1873, he founded the Satyashatak Samaj, which was open to everyone without any distinction of caste and religion. Its aim was to work for winning equal rights for the people of the oppressed castes. Mahatma Phule was opposed to the supremacy of the Brahmins and started the practice of arranging marriage ceremonies without Brahmins priests. Jyotiba was given the title of Mahatma in recognition of his work for the cause of the oppressed. Objectives of Satyashatak Samaj: to liberate the Shudras and Arti Shudras, to prevent their exploitation by the upper caste like Brahmins, to spread of rational thinking, to reject the need for a Brahmin priestly class as educational and religious leaders. Dayanand Saraswati and Arya Samaj. In northern India, Dayananda Saraswati, whose original name was Mul Shankara, born in Kathiawar in 1824, became a rebel by rejecting idol worship at the age of 14. Soon after, he left home and led life of a wandering scholar in search of knowledge. During this period, he acquired mastery over Sanskrit language and literature. In 1863, Dayanand started preaching his doctrine that there was only one God who was to be worshipped not in the form of images but as a spirit. He held that the Vedas contained all the knowledge imparted to man by God and essentials of modern science could also be traced there. With this message, he went about all over the country and in 1875 founded the Arya Samaj in Bombay. Dayanand preached and wrote in Hindi. The Satyarth Prakash was his most important book. The use of Hindi made his ideas accessible to the common people of northern India. The Arya Samaj made rapid progress in UP, Rajasthan, and Gujarat, and particularly in Punjab, where it became a very important social and political force. The members of the Arya Samaj were guided by 10 principles, of which the first one was studying the Vedas. The rest were tenets on virtue and morality. Dayanand framed for them a code of social conduct, in which there was no room for caste distinctions and social inequality. The Arya Samajists opposed child marriages and encouraged remarriage of widows. A network of schools and colleges for boys and girls was established throughout northern India to promote the spread of education. The Dayananda Anglo-Vedic School of Lahore, which soon developed into a premier college of Punjab, set the pattern for such institutions. Here instructions were given through English and Hindi on modern lines. Among his disciples who wanted to maintain the original spirit of Dayananda founded the Gurukul at Hardwar, which was set up on the pattern of ancient ashrams. Dayananda preached that the Vedas were infallible. This was because of his ardent desire to give the Hindus a definite set of religious beliefs, which would give them a militant character. Similar in nature was his move for the reconversion of those Hindus who had converted to other religions like Islam and Christianity. For this purpose a purificatory ceremony called Shuddhi was prescribed. Thus many reformers referred to the Vedas and other ancient texts to support their ideas of religious and social reform. They, however, upheld their ideas mainly on the basis of reason, and some of them openly questioned the authority of ancient scriptures. Dayanand, on the other hand, asserted the infallibility of the Vedas. The influence of Dayanand and Arya Samaj, in the promotion of education, upliftment of women and weakening the hold of the caste system was deeper than that of other reform movements. Syed Ahmed Khan Aligarh movement, consequences and objectives. The most important movement for the spread of modern education and social reform among Muslims was started by Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, 1817 to 1898. He came from a family of nobles of the Mughal court. He joined the services of the East India Company as a judicial officer and remained loyal to them during the revolt of 1857, whereas the British rulers regarded the Muslims as their real enemies and most dangerous rivals and followed a policy of discrimination against them. Syed Ahmed Khan was deeply concerned at the depressing situation of the Muslims, and raising them from their backwardness became his lifelong passion and aim. He strove hard to remove the hostility of the British rulers towards the Muslims. He appealed to the Muslims to return to the original Islamic principles of purity and simplicity. He advocated English education for the regeneration of Muslims in India. His emphasis on science particularly offended the orthodox Muslims. He faced opposition from the orthodox sections of Muslims. However, with courage and wisdom, he overcame these obstacles. In 1864, he founded the Translation Society, which was later renamed the Scientific Society. The society was located at Aligarh. It published Urdu translations of English books on science and other subjects, and an English-Urdu journal for spreading liberal ideas on social reforms. He advocated the removal of many social prejudices that kept the community backward. His greatest achievement was the establishment of the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College, also known as Aligarh Muslim University, at Aligarh in 1875. In course of time, this college became the most important educational institution of Indian Muslims. It provided for education in humanities and science throughout English medium, and many of its staff members came from England. The college received support from leading Muslims throughout India, and the British showed much interest, both officially and otherwise, in its development. The Mao College, which later became the Aligarh Muslim University, fostered a modern outlook among the generations of students that studied there. The movement of Muslim awakening associated with Syed Ahmed Khan and Mao College came to be known as Aligarh movement. He opposed the activities of the Indian National Congress. He believed, like many other leaders at that time, that Indians were not yet ready to govern themselves and that their interests would be best served by remaining loyal to the British rule. He founded the Indian Patriotic Association with the support of some Hindu and Muslim leaders to oppose the Congress and tried to dissuade the Muslims from joining the Congress. He emphasized the unity between Hindus and Muslims. Conclusion. Sir Syed Ahmed Khan was one of the greatest Muslim reformers of India. He interpreted Quran in the light of modern rationalism and science. He took up the struggle against fanaticism, ignorance, narrow-mindedness, and bigotry, and laid emphasis on free thinking. Muslim socio-religious movements in India. In the early 19th century, the first signs of Muslim awakening appeared under the leadership of Sir Syed Ahmed Khan of Bareilly in UP and Shariatullah of Bengal. This was happening due to the Christian missionaries, influence of Western ideas, and modern education. Hence, they set themselves to the task of purifying and strengthening Islam and promoting Islamic learning. Shariatullah started the Farazi movement of Bengal, which took up initiative to the cause of the peasants. He also expresses strong disapproval to the caste system among Muslims. During the first half of the 19th century, only a handful of Muslims of Delhi and Calcutta had taken to English education. Most of them kept themselves away from it because of the attitude of the ulama or Muslim priest, and the unwillingness of the upper-class Muslims to reconcile themselves to the British rule. The revolt of 1857 created discontentment among British about Muslim due to their active participation. Hence, being part of the few enlightened, educated Muslims, Shariatullah felt the need for adopting a cooperative policy towards the rulers and improving their social condition with the help of the British. A few movements were also launched aiming at the spread of modern education and removing social abuses like purdah and polygamy. The Mohammedan Literacy Society of Calcutta, founded in 1863 by Nawab Abdul Latif, 1828–1893, was one of the earliest organizations to take steps in this direction. It played an important role in the spread of education, particularly among the Muslims of Bengal, as well as promoting Hindu-Muslim unity. Wahhabi movement. It was also known as Waliullah movement, which started in response to the Western influences and was inspired by the teachings of Shah Waliullah, who was regarded as the first Indian Muslim leader. The entire movement was moving around the legacy of Islam, Quran and Hadith. Ahmadiyya movement. This movement was started by Mirza Ghulam Ahmed in 1889 in order to spread Western education among Indian Muslims. The movement was based on liberal principles, just like Brahmo Samaj. The Deoband School. This movement was started against the liberal movement by the orthodox Muslim ulama to teach the real essence of Islam on the basis of Quran and Hadith, and also to preach the concept of jihad against the foreign rule. Conclusion. 19th century was the period of awakening not only for the Hindu-Muslim but the entire masses. A number of reformers came forward to eradicate malpractices performed in the name of religion and preached about the greatness of India's culture and philosophy. The ideas of self-reliance, self-respect and national pride were propagated. Theosophical Society, roles and features of the movement in India. Theosophy is the wisdom underlying all religions when they are stripped of accretions and superstitions. It offers a philosophy which renders life intelligible and demonstrates that justice and love guide the cosmos. Its teachings aid the revelation of the latent spiritual nature in the human being, without dependence on any external phenomena. The Theosophical Society is an organization formed in 1875 to advance theosophy. Meaning of theosophy. Theosophy is derived from the Greek word theosophia, literally meaning God's wisdom. It refers to systems of esoteric philosophy concerning, or seeking direct knowledge of, presumed mysteries of being and nature, particularly concerning the nature of divinity. Its essence is in its referring to hidden knowledge or wisdom that offers the individual enlightenment and salvation. The theosopher seeks to understand the mysteries of the universe and the bonds that unite the universe, humanity, and the divine. The goal of theosophy is to explore the origin of divinity, humanity, and the world. From investigation of these topics, theosophers try to discover a coherent description of the purpose and origin of the universe. The Theosophical Society was founded by Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Alcott in 1875 in New York. It was only in 1879 that this ideology gained its roots in the Indian culture and society. It was crystallized in the Madras Presidency with its headquarters in Adyar. The movement was popularized by Annie Besant in India. Theosophy was based on 3 principles. Universal brotherhood. The study of comparative religion and philosophy. Investigations into the natural laws which seek to understand the unexplained mystic laws. Roles of Theosophical Society and Theosophist. The Theosophists respected all religions. They were opposed to conversions and believed in the transmigration of soul and occult mysticism. Theosophical Society was an integral part of the revival of Hinduism in India, which also brought about a certain degree of social solidarity. To quote Annie Besant, without Hinduism, India has no future. Hinduism is the soil into which India's roots are struck, and torn out of that she will invincibly wither as a tree torn out of its place. The Theosophists also worked for the abolition of caste, untouchability, and believed in the philosophy of assimilation. They genuinely worked towards social acceptability and integration of the marginalized sections. They tried to better the conditions of the socially excluded by encouraging them to take up mainstream education. In this regard, Annie Besant also set up several educational societies and propagated the need to spread modern education. Contribution of Annie Besant. Annie Besant had joined the Theosophical Society in 1889. She was a firm believer in the teachings of Vedas and Upanishads. She considered the Indian soil to be so liberating and enlightening at the same time that she took the nation as her own and made it her permanent abode. She was a protester against the prevalent evils of the then Indian society like child marriage, unacceptability of widow remarriage, etc. In her attempt to bring education at every doorstep, she started the Banaras Central School. It was around this very nucleus that the present Banaras Hindu University culminated. South India also saw a wave of her efforts in various schools and colleges being established. She was also known for impactful writing. Education, philosophy, politics were among the prime concern which she developed on and worked by the means of the Theosophical Society. She also started the Home Rule League in 1916, similar to the Irish League movement. In her attempt to spread the vision of the society she vehemently worked for, she published 2 journals called The New India and The Common Weal. The Theosophical movement had more appeal among intelligentsia than the masses and made its own mark in the 19th century. It came to be allied with Hindu Renaissance. Features of Theosophical Society. A special relationship could be established between a person's soul and God by contemplation, prayer, revelation, etc. The society accepted the Hindu beliefs in reincarnation, karma, and drew inspiration from the philosophy of the Upanishads and Samkhya, Yoga, and Vedanta school of thoughts. It called for universal brotherhood without distinction or race, creed, sex, caste, or color. The society sought to investigate the unexplained laws of nature and the powers latent in man. The movement aimed at the quest of the Hindu spiritual wisdom through Western enlightenment. The movement revived and strengthened faith in the ancient doctrines and philosophies of the Hindus. To study and preach Aryan philosophy and religion. The Upanishads revealed the truth of the Absolute, the universe and life. It was cosmopolitan enough to appreciate all forms of religion and all modes of worship. Apart from philosophical and spiritual discourse, which the society carried on, its valuable contribution to the Hindu awakening came from its literary and research activities. Hindu scriptures were published and translated. The society encouraged reforms and framed educational schemes to work them out.